The city was alive with noise, a chorus of car horns, people rushing to work, and the faint hum of life carrying through the early morning air. But behind a bustling cafe, hidden in the shadows of towering buildings, sat a man who had long been forgotten by the world. His clothes were tattered, his face etched with lines of struggle and hardship. His name was John Mitchell, and to most, he was invisible, just another homeless figure on the edge of society. The cold wind nipped at his skin as he huddled in the corner of a faded bench, clutching a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. The smell of freshly baked croissants wafted through the air, but John didn't move. His hands shook, not just from the cold, but from memories that haunted him every day. Memories of a life he had once led, of battles fought on foreign soil, and of a family that had long since turned their back on him. Today, however, something was different. The cafe manager had seen him again, and this time, the world would know who John Mitchell truly was. John Mitchell hadn't always been a man struggling to survive on the streets. Once, he had been Sergeant John Mitchell, a decorated war hero who served with honor in places most people couldn't even name. He had been a man of purpose, a man of pride. His uniform had once carried the weight of sacrifice. He had fought for his country, side by side with his brothers in arms. But the world had a funny way of turning on you when you least expected it. John had come home from the war to find his country had moved on without him. The world had changed, and so had the people he loved. His wife, who once greeted him with open arms, now seemed distant, unable to understand the weight of his trauma. His friends, too, drifted away, unable to relate to the man who had seen too much, felt too much. Slowly, he withdrew into himself, too proud to ask for help but too broken to heal on his own. As the years went by, his struggles grew. Jobs came and went, but nothing felt right anymore. The world was loud, fast, and indifferent, and John, unable to keep up with it, had been swallowed whole by the streets. He slept in parks, on benches, and under bridges. He ate scraps when he could, sometimes relying on the kindness of strangers. But no one ever truly saw him. No one ever truly asked, who was John Mitchell before the streets? He didn't know anymore. He only knew the man who was here, who had no family, no home, no purpose. Just a man surviving, one cold night at a time. It was a cold Thursday morning when the cafe manager spotted him again. John had been sitting by the alley entrance for hours, his back pressed against the brick wall, staring at the ground. The cafe, with its warm aroma of coffee and fresh pastries, had always been a symbol of everything he had lost. He watched the customers come and go, their laughter and chatter a reminder of the life he could never have again. It was then that the manager, a well-meaning but frazzled woman named Sarah, decided she'd had enough. She had watched John for weeks, feeling a mix of pity and discomfort. She had seen the way people averted their eyes as they passed him, pretending not to notice the man who had become a fixture of the corner. But Sarah wasn't heartless. She had offered him free food before, but he always refused. Today, though, something snapped within her. She approached John cautiously, her voice tinged with concern. "Excuse me, sir. Would you like something to eat? It's on the house. You don't have to stay out here in the cold." John looked up at her, his eyes dull, tired from years of rejection. His voice was hoarse when he spoke, but there was a quiet strength in his words. "I don't want your pity, ma'am. I don't want anything for free." Sarah paused, her breath caught in her throat. The words stung, but she tried to keep her composure. "It's not pity," she said gently. "You don't have to be alone. You can come inside, just for a moment. You don't have to hide out here." John's eyes flickered with something unreadable. For a moment, he seemed to consider it, before he stood up abruptly, pushing the cup of coffee away. "I don't want to be a burden," he said, his voice quieter now. "I've been a burden my whole life." And with that, he walked away, leaving Sarah standing there, confused and unsettled. Little did she know, this would be the moment that everything changed. Later that day, Sarah was surprised to find the police at the cafe. An officer, A young woman named Detective Anna Hayes stepped inside and asked to speak to the manager. Sarah, still shaken by her encounter with John, met the officer near the counter. "There's a situation outside," Anna said, her tone serious but not unkind. "A man has been reported for trespassing on the property. His name is John Mitchell. We need to ask you a few questions." Sarah's heart sank. She knew exactly who John Mitchell was, the homeless man who sat by the alley, refusing help, yet never causing trouble. She tried to explain to the officer that he wasn't a threat, just a man down on his luck. But Anna was already pulling out her phone, searching for something. "Wait a minute," Anna said, staring at the screen. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "This can't be right. What is it?" Sarah asked, panic rising in her chest. The officer turned the phone toward Sarah. The image on the screen was grainy but unmistakable. A young John Mitchell in uniform, a medal hanging around his neck. "John Mitchell, is this the same man?" Anna asked, her voice now tinged with awe. Sarah nodded slowly, still unsure where the conversation was going. Anna looked at her, and for the first time, Sarah saw a flicker of recognition in the officer's eyes. "He's a hero," Anna said softly. "A war hero. He saved my brother's life. But after he came home, he just disappeared. No one knew what happened to him. He became a ghost." Sarah stood frozen, the weight of the revelation settling heavily on her shoulders. The man she had seen as a mere street dweller, a forgotten soul, was a hero. The same man who had refused help had once put his life on the line to save others. And now, the truth was out. The world was about to see John Mitchell not as a burden, but as a symbol of sacrifice and resilience. His story was just beginning to be told. The next day, John was brought to court, facing charges of trespassing. Sarah had called the authorities, but there was a strange tension in the air as the trial began. John, looking out of place in a courtroom, sat silently in the defendant's chair. The prosecutor argued that John's actions were disruptive and that he was causing harm to the cafe's business. But then, something unexpected happened. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, paused in the middle of the proceedings. She stared at John for a long moment, then leaned forward. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion, "I need to ask you something." John looked up, his eyes wide with confusion. "Did you serve in the military?" the judge asked, her voice tinged with recognition. John nodded slowly, his hands trembling slightly. "I did, ma'am." The judge's eyes softened. "Did you serve with the 5th Battalion, the 2nd Infantry? Were you in the battle at Tawara?" John's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't heard that name in years. It was a battle that haunted him every day. "Yes," he whispered. The judge looked around the courtroom, then back at John. "You saved my brother's life," she said softly. "I've been looking for you for years." The room fell silent. Every eye locked on the judge and the man who had once been nothing more than a stranger. But now, in this moment, the truth was revealed. John Mitchell was not just a homeless man. He was a hero, and he deserved to be treated as one. The charges were dropped immediately. John didn't say much as he left the courtroom, his heart still heavy with everything that had unfolded. But as he stepped outside, something had changed. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope. A few days later, Sarah called him again, this time with an offer he couldn't refuse. She had managed to rally some support. A local veterans organization had stepped forward, offering him a place to stay, a chance to rebuild his life. John didn't know where this new path would take him, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a chance. He wasn't just a forgotten man. He was a man who had survived, a man who had given everything for others. And now, finally, the world was starting to see him for who he really was. He wasn't invisible anymore. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe for more powerful and life-changing tales. John's journey is just one of many, and we believe everyone has a story worth telling. Help spread the word by sharing this video with someone who needs a reminder that heroes come in all shapes and forms, and that kindness can change a life. Join us and be part of a community that believes in the power of redemption, resilience, and hope. Thank you for watching. Stay inspired and keep sharing stories that matter.